Happy Thursday and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And back with us is Alex Robinson from the Star Wars Minute.
Yes, that's me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rocketeer Minute.
Which Alex has seen 3 whole minutes of, and we are in minute 2 of his existential experience with the Rocketeer.
This is the Empire Strikes Back of my minutes.
Yes,
yes, it is.
This is the dark and scary one. So we start back where we left off yesterday with a hairy pinkie tapping along to. Well, Hal, you must know what opera is this?
First of all, I want to register my protest against the repeated use of the phrase "hairy pinky." It just makes me uncomfortable. But otherwise, So the aria that you're hearing sung through the radio there is from Act 2 of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, otherwise known as the Magic Flute, and that's all I got.
There we go. Well, that's excellent.
That's my contribution to this minute, I think.
Yeah, and Alex, being from the Star Wars Minute, has much experience with disembodied hands floating through the air.
Although they're often right hands, as I recall.
Yeah. So he's reaching across to tone down the noise to back when people used to answer their own phones.
Right. And when they used knobs to control the volume of things.
Yeah.
And when their phone and their music came from 2 different places.
Yeah.
That's really weird that he's just sitting in a chair. I guess, is that what people did back in olden times? He's just sitting in a chair eating cucumber sandwiches, listening to like an opera or something?
With the crust cut off.
With the crust cut off, yeah.
And just looking at the red glow from the neon outside the window. That's just
drinking tea, I guess, we assume.
Yeah, it looks rather civilized. It also feels like a callback to the movie Airport with the crust cut off there on the sandwiches. But
I know that was legendary in Airport.
Is that the theme of the movies you're going to cover? Is all ones that feature sandwiches with crust cut off?
I think I'm going to have to work that in somewhere. This will be the Hitchcockian role of sandwiches with the crust cut off. So I guess Moonraker is next with Hugo Trax. I think we'll have to do.
Wow.
So, can I press you to a cucumber sandwich? Gosh, one thing I miss from those days, look at that. It's almost like gutta percha, the thickness of the telephone cord. You could throttle somebody with that pretty darn good. It's nice, solid, almost leathery, and it's that does seem like a comfortable chair, though. It's a pretty wide chair for a guy. Sure. Well, we haven't seen him, but it's right up there with Blue's Clues in terms of
knowing that the actor is called Tiny Ron, ironically, then it does look comfortable. And that big phone cord, that's very much like from my nerdy perspective, I look at that and I think of the big sort of cloth wiring harnesses you find in airplanes of the day. Most of my favorite airplanes to fly are from this era, from the 30s and 40s, and you don't see those big, heavy-duty cloth covered wires anymore unless it's a really, really faithful restoration.
Did the I don't know. Did the David Clarks of the day use those kind of things for plugins for
headsets?
For headsets, yeah.
Sure.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, the airplane I grew up flying had cloth covered headset cable, and then just a big leather band across the top, and these 2 hard rubber cushions, and then there was a separate handheld. You didn't have a boom mic; you had a separate handheld microphone for the radio that was Bakelite, and it made this great little squeaky noise when you push the button.
Alex, we are of slightly different ages, but did you grow up with a rotary phone? Did you have a rotary phone in your house?
Yes, when I was very young, we had one. I remember, but mostly we had the push button one. We probably. I think mostly we had the push-button one, but I do remember the hours and hours spent when you'd have to wait, as the dial went all the way back around, probably maybe 3 months out of my life was probably
right.
So the big question, Alex, do you remember, did you take your finger out or did you give it a free ride back to home base? After you would dial. That was a George Carlin thing. He was always wondering that from people.
I think I would take my finger out.
Yeah. I was lazy. I let it ride. Just let it ride.
Yeah.
Now,
I bet if I had one and I tried to do it, I think I would probably do it the same way, and my instinct would be that I would. But who knows? I was a kid back then too, so I might have been like
decades
tired.
of muscle memory would come right back.
Yeah.
and Alex, you grew up not too far from where I lived, and I was in Putnam County, New York. And I don't know in your childhood if they still had it, but in my childhood, everybody in the town, I lived in Brewster, and everybody in that town, you didn't have to dial the first 3 digits of your 7-digit number. You only had to dial the last 4. Had that moved on by the time?
Wow, no, I do not. That was we had like 2 exchanges, but I don't remember ever having just 4 digits. That's super awesome.
Yeah, that was super pathetic because the reason that we didn't have touch tone phones because it wasn't available because they didn't have the newer switches that could handle touch tone. So the upside of it was you didn't have to dial as many numbers, but that was
where where I went to college and where I worked for several years. Even when I left in '95 or so recent-ish memory, at least to someone my age, you would only have to dial 5-digit phone numbers because there was 2 prefixes, so you dialed the third digit of the prefix and then the 4 after that. And then, of course, I lived for many, many years in Western Washington near Seattle, so not too far from where you are, Alex. And remember when new area codes started popping up, and then that just accelerated, and it just got to a point where everybody just has a 10-digit phone number.
Yeah.
You have to know what the area code is, right? Whether it's whichever suburb it is. And then moving several years ago out to the Midwest, a smaller town here in Wisconsin, it's weird to just hear people give normal phone numbers. Nobody gives the area code because there's really I think there's 2 in the whole state, something like that.
Yeah, Rhode Island is similar to that. There's they start typing in the 401 if you go to a CVS or something like that and they ask you for your phone number, you start giving them the phone number and they've already typed in 401. You go, no, I'm not from around here. You'll have to put this in at the front. Yeah, the rotary phone reminded me of when my kids were growing up. We were living in Virginia, and I had an old rotary phone in our basement. It was a playroom for the kids, and my son had a friend come over, and my son wanted to know if he could stay for dinner. I said, well, have him call his mom and find out if it's okay. I said, there's a phone downstairs, and the kid went downstairs and came back up and said, I don't know how that works. And that seemed to have been the breaking point of rotary versus. Although I think they still sell, like the Fisher Price things, I think they still sell a rotary version. I don't know if the kids know that actually is supposed to be a phone anymore. But
right, because it's not a square piece or a rectangular piece of glass.
Yeah. Of course, this was back when people actually remembered phone numbers. So
that's true. I had a big, my last home office, I had a big red rotary style phone on it, but without the dial that would just light up when it rang. And then I had that wired to a bat signal that would flash on the ceiling. So anytime the phone rang, the red light would flash, the bat signal would be on the ceiling, and I'd answer feeling really important.
Wow.
So this is getting a little off the track, but sorry.
Wait, there's a track? Why wasn't I informed?
Go right ahead, Alex.
I was just going to wonder, when you go to jail, I keep my brother's phone number memorized because if I ever go to jail and I have to call him, I at least have one number that I know where I can reach somebody. But so what do they do nowadays when everyone is no one memorizes phone numbers anymore? If you go to jail and you say, I want my one phone call, do they let you use your phone, or do they just are you just
They might look up the number for you. That's about the best thing I could think of.
Oh, like they'll look at your phone and you'll have to. But
so you tell them look up this so and so contact and
right.
But that's a good question. I was actually in law enforcement for several years, a couple of careers ago, but that was I got out of that really right before cell phones. So my experience is useless.
Of course, if you unlocked your phone, that would give them an unlocked phone. They could look at your texts, your texts and things, so
and emails and whatever. So, and Alex, I got to tell you, if you think Phone Minute, which we're doing right now, is exciting, you should have joined us for Vacuum Cleaner Minute.
Yeah, we were.
That was some epic podcasting. I think Jim would agree.
Sucks.
Ouch, ouch a lot.
Wow. So we go from the rotary phone, the nicely lit Dunkin' Donuts colors rotary phone, to the bean field where a locked chain is being hammered into the ground onto a stake. Good solid hits on those sledgehammers. And we follow the chain back to poor old Lindy, who's been cut down from the flying school.
Right.
And we talked about the Lindy statue in a previous minute. Peavy and Cliff are assuming the positions out there in the middle of the bean field. Beautifully lit, by the way. I like the way they've got those lights set up so that it looks like it's coming from the headlight of the Ford pickup truck. And a nice camera movement and rack of focus of they're down with good solid Universal Studios Frankenstein-styled knife switch, ready to go to test out this first scene of the rocket actually being launched on purpose.
So here's a quick question for both of you guys: have either of you ever turned something on using one of those switches?
The only thing I could possibly think of would be like a model train set.
Ah, yeah, that's a good point. Because you look at it, I can tell you exactly what it feels like. Like maybe I must have used one, but I couldn't think of what it was for. But model trains would be probably just about the closest thing.
I can't think of anything else.
But now I need to go get one and connect it to something. So
just that gentle friction signal. as the contacts hit, that gentle friction as you feel it connect.
Right.
Does it really need to be a double pole? I was just wondering about why. Well, I guess that's extra safety of having both circuits being aligned. But really, you only need just one knife to close the circuit. But it looks. I think this is what you're expecting in a movie. You want a double pole knife switch.
Absolutely.
Double pole knife switch.
Yeah.
In the notes you prepared, I assume it was you, that you passed along. It was referred to as a guillotine switch.
Yes, it's also known as a guillotine switch. It's just generally a knife shape. In this, I think it's called a guillotine because it looks like a guillotine when it's in the open position.
That makes sense.
So, and it just has that nice slapping, tug of. There's a bit of finality as it hits the contacts at the bottom. I guess you don't have to worry like with a push button. You're never sure. Did I push it far enough? Did it hit the thing? You actually have a good visual indicator and that nice tactile feel of the circuits closing.
So Jim, have you ever zoomed in close on the big spool of wire that they've run out to connect to the switch? I'm just looking at it here at like second 40 or so, and it looks like it just says wire company, presumably wire company, maybe something, Los Angeles, California. But I don't see like there's a name before Wire Company. So really, was that the name of the company that made Wire? Were they just Wire Company?
Maybe it was the Wire Company of Los Angeles, California. Like we're missing the of.
And a the there like before the Wire, which we can't really see.
Yeah, it's again, it's Joe Johnson and his appreciation for freeze framing.
Exactly.
He seems to be putting in so many noodles on this thing. It's just lots to peel through. And I guess Alex, this is your first view of the rocket, which differs significantly from the Dave Stevens version. This is a 2-barrel versus the single barrel that he had.
It's more FET style.
Yeah.
I have to relate everything to Star Wars in order to understand things.
Well, you can think of it as dual nacelles if you want to bring it back to a Trek or something. I do like that. That Lindy is wearing Jod. They all seem to be wearing the calf length boots, which
of course, no well-dressed aviator of the day would show up without them.
Is there a problem with rudder control that you would want to have high boots on? I'm not sure what the purpose is in an aviation shoe setting.
The jodhpurs themselves, that's really was just about style and everything else. And my assumption was always that the boots were to control the pants so that you didn't get them tangled, because a lot of the older airplanes of the day, the control cables were just open and exposed. And so as you're sitting in the cockpit, you have cables moving on both sides of you and down around your feet. So my assumption was always, well, the boots will make sure that no loose fabric, gets snagged and something like that.
The no khakis in the cables rule. I get it.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Yes. They teach you that at the first day of flying school.
Here are your pants, and here are your
yes. Here's your pants, here's the keys to the airplane.
Alan Arkin looks especially ready to go here. He seems to be very excited about this take. I don't know if this is the last shot of the evening? Is that why they're so excited that it's like we get this done and then we can leave?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's nice to see the character so excited about this because for a large part up to this point, Cliff's been dragging him along and he's had to sort of talk him into this whole escapade and doing anything with this found rocket. But it's once it starts to work, Peavy's more in his element. He's stoked about it.
Yeah. Now, I know that first shot when we're watching the ignition, that first shot is actually done with a cable on a large crane being lifted up in the air. I have been trying to figure out how they do the thing where it's rotating.
I've wondered that too. And is there another cable on top of it, and it's just keeping that other cable taut? And how are they rotating it? It's got to be something like a crane, but
it's a floor effect. It's not CGI. So this is quite an interesting effect. You can watch it going in and out of the spotlight there.
Yeah, and there's nothing to suggest that it's not happening. As you said, it's floor effect. It's not happening right in front of these guys. Everything looks like they're sitting there watching this, and that probably the magic is happening just in the dark up above.
So you guys don't know how this was done? Is that what I'm guessing?
We don't. Well, I know that first shot when we're first watching the ignition and he takes off, that's done on a cable crane, and that was shown in a little. They had like a behind the scenes thing that was done for ABC back when the movie came out, but they never explain how that looping circle was done. I mean, it really does look like the thrust is pushing it into this big roll around and around in the sky.
Although, Alex, I never like to acknowledge that I don't know something. I like to feel like we're interested in exploring how this was done. I think that puts a much happier spin on it.
Well, I was going to say that perhaps this is actually a miniature, and that that at this point the chain is a wire, and the thing at the end is just a very light. But I don't know how they would do the fire and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The fire is really good for that, and if it is a miniature, boy, it's composited really, really well. Just you just see the tops of Alan Arkin and Billy Campbell's heads there. The compositing would be surprisingly good, but not impossible.
Yeah. Now, when Alex, I know when you were growing up, when the Rocketeer first came out, the novel. Do you remember your first viewing of that? I mean, when it first came out in the 80s.
I don't. I mean, I definitely remember the book. I don't remember it being like the kind of thing where the first time I saw it, I was, especially. Dave Stevens was a beautiful artist, and he could draw especially pretty-looking ladies. So, he definitely had gorgeous art. That's definitely what made an impression on me, and also the fact that it was this kind of period. I wasn't sure whether this was a adaptation of an old property or whether this was something he was making up. Or whatever, but because it definitely had the authentic feel of like a, look and feel of a 30s type character.
Did you ever want to explore that kind of art that he was doing, the cheesecake modeling, the modeled images rather than more of a cartoonish style? I mean, he did really that whole look that he was doing there. It's almost like a Vargas look of styling, a lot of very gentle shadows, and then followed by harsh shadows in the midst of it all. I mean, it seems to be. I mean, it's reminiscent of a lot of art of the time of the 30s and 40s, but he also made it a lot of his own. More like it wasn't as crude as we had Brian Fees on earlier this week, and he talked about how this was not the cartoon art of the time. If you looked at comic books of the 30s and 40s, they didn't look at all like that. They looked rather crude and but this had almost a pinup art quality to it.
Yeah, he definitely had anyone who could draw as well as Dave Stevens could would not have been puttering around in the nickel and dime world of comics. He would have been doing illustrations for magazines, and comics were the bottom of the barrel at that point. And so I personally do not have the artistic chops he does to be able to do that kind of very realistic but yet cartoonish exaggeration enough to make it interesting, but generally realistic looking art. And so it's actually nice in a way because I can just sit back and be amazed by it as opposed to feeling any feelings of competitive jealousy or something.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was surprised at how few examples of Dave Stevens art there were. I didn't realize he had such a short. It wasn't a short career, but he wasn't a very prolific artist.
Yeah, I think
he was such a. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I think he was just very slow. I think that was his. I think the Rocketeer comic itself took it's fairly short, and I took him a few years to do. So I think just because he has such an immaculate style that I think he was tended to be on the slower side, which in the comics biz is not a good. It's tough to make it unless you can do quantity of pages very quickly.
It's still. I mean, it's interesting seeing the new generation of people doing Rocketeer. They're trying to approach his drawing style, but I would imagine that it's kind of self-defeating in that you have to spend that kind of time to do a quality work like that. Just panel after panel, trying to build that stuff up must be incredible.
It's hard to fake.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna leave Peavy and Cliff watching Lindy circling the bean field here as
however it's happening.
Yeah, however, whatever's causing it, we'll just assume that it's a big jetpack that some rich guy made out in California.
That's probably the easiest thing.
Yeah, let's pick this up tomorrow, and we'll finish up the week. If you can join us, Alex, and let's. In the meantime, for folks listening in, check us out on social media. We're available in all the usual locations: Twitter, Rocketeer Minute, Facebook, the Rocketeer Minute, the Rocketeers Bulldog Cafe, where you can join in the fray. We've also got a great big site, RocketeerMinute.com, where you can pick up cool swag and copies of this movie so you can actually catch up and watch the movie along with us. So join us here as we finish out the week tomorrow on the Rocketeer Minute. And until then, over and out.
Go get him, kid.